My name is Ignacio Thompson, 68 years old, watching another sunset from my porch swing. The phone in my hand feels heavy, displaying words that cut deeper than any knife. 5 years after losing Marie, my world is crumbling again. Douglas, my only son, the boy I sacrificed everything for, just texted me. Plans changed. You're not coming on the cruise. It's for family only. Family only. The words blur as tears form. How did we get here? If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you loved unconditionally, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit subscribe if you want to see how I turned this heartbreak into the most important lesson my son would ever learn. I grew up in Chicago, the son of a factory worker and a seamstress. My parents arrived from Mexico with nothing but dreams and calloused hands. They taught me that education was the one thing nobody could take away from you. While my friends played after school, I studied. While they partied in college, I worked night shifts at a local diner, falling asleep over engineering textbooks. Nothing was handed to me. When I met Marie during my senior year at Illinois Tech, I knew she was the one. Her smile could light up the darkest room, and her laugh made everything better. We married young by today's standards, just 23, but we built a beautiful life together over 40 years. Marie was my compass, my best friend, my everything. Even now, I catch myself turning to tell her something before remembering she's gone. 5 years after losing her to cancer, that empty space beside me never quite fills. Douglas came along 3 years into our marriage. Our miracle baby after doctors told us children might not be possible. From the moment I held him, I promised to give him everything I never had. Marie and I worked extra hours, saved every penny, and prioritized his future above our own comforts. Unlike my public school experience, Douglas attended Lakeside Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the state. Every semester when that tuition bill arrived, Marie and I would look at each other across the kitchen table, wondering if we were doing the right thing. But seeing Douglas thrive, watching him graduate as valedictorian, then earn acceptance to Cornell University, those moments confirmed our sacrifices were worthwhile. After college, Douglas returned to Chicago and met Stephanie at a friend's wedding. She came from money, old money as they say. Her father owned several car dealerships across the Midwest, and she'd never known struggle. Initially, I was charmed by her confidence and how she seemed to make Douglas happy. Marie had reservations. She kept mostly to herself. Gentle comments about Stephanie's expectations and attitude toward service workers. I should have listened more closely. They married 7 years ago at the Langham Hotel downtown, a lavish affair that cost more than our house. Marie was already sick then, though we didn't tell anyone. She wanted to see her son married without a cloud hanging over the celebration. When Douglas and Stephanie decided to buy their first home, I offered to help with the down payment. It's just sitting in our retirement account, I told Marie. We've always lived modestly. Let's help them start right. In truth, it wasn't just the down payment. I purchased the house outright, putting it in my name with an agreement that Douglas would buy it from me gradually. He never made a single payment, always having some reason. Business startup costs, the twins' preschool, home renovations. I never pressed the issue. The twins, Jackson and Lily, arrived 3 years ago, and my heart expanded in ways I never thought possible. Being a grandfather gave me purpose after losing Marie. I drive across town 3 times a week to babysit, bringing little educational toys and books, those tiny faces looking up at me with Douglas's eyes. Nothing could compare to that feeling. Looking back now, I see the warning signs. Douglas's calls becoming less frequent. Family dinners where Stephanie would check her watch repeatedly. The way conversation stopped when I entered a room. You're imagining things, I told myself. They're just busy with the kids and work. Stephanie's comments grew increasingly barbed. That shirt looks comfortable, Ignacio. Very age-appropriate. Or, the twins are learning Spanish at school with a proper accent, as if my slight Mexican accent after 60 years in America was somehow deficient. I swallowed these insults, telling myself family peace was worth my dignity. Beyond the house, I supported Douglas in countless ways. When his marketing firm struggled during its first year, I paid his credit card bills. When their second car broke down, I financed a new SUV. I never considered these loans. They were gifts from a father who could afford to help his son. Douglas never refused, though the gratitude in his eyes diminished with each check. Our family vacation tradition began when Douglas was 10. Marie read an article about how shared travel experiences create stronger family bonds than material gifts. Our first trip was a simple weekend at Lake Michigan, but as our finances improved, we ventured further. The Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, even Hawaii for Douglas's high school graduation. After Marie passed, continuing the tradition felt like honoring her memory. This year, I suggested a Caribbean cruise during spring break. The twins were old enough to enjoy it, and I researched ships with the best children's programs. I spent hours on the phone, securing connecting cabins with balconies, paying deposits, arranging shore excursions appropriate for 5-year-olds. I pictured building sandcastles with my grandchildren, teaching them to snorkel in clear blue waters, creating memories they might someday share with their own children. When I called Douglas to confirm the final payment deadline, his enthusiasm seemed forced. "Actually, Dad, let me get back to you on that. We're still figuring out some scheduling stuff." This from the son who had enthusiastically agreed to dates months earlier. I should have known then that something wasn't right. But sometimes, the people closest to us are the ones we're most blind to. The cruise was scheduled for early April, giving us the perfect balance of warm Caribbean weather before the summer humidity. I'd made the initial booking in September, almost 7 months in advance, to secure the best cabins and early dining slot that would accommodate the twins' schedule. By January, Douglas became increasingly difficult to reach regarding trip details. My calls went to voicemail more often than not, and text messages received brief, non-committal responses. "Can't talk now. In a meeting. We'll call you back tomorrow." The promised return calls rarely came. During my regular Tuesday visit with the twins, I overheard Douglas on the phone in his home office. "No, he doesn't know yet. We'll figure it out. It's complicated." The conversation abruptly changed when he noticed me standing in the doorway with Lily in my arms. The secretive tone struck me as odd, but I dismissed it. Perhaps a surprise birthday celebration. My birthday was months away, but I wanted to believe the best. The following week, I arrived early to babysit and found Stephanie in heated conversation with someone on her phone. "It's just awkward having him there the whole time." My parents agree. "No, Douglas hasn't told him yet." She spotted me and quickly ended the call, plastering on a smile that never reached her eyes. "Ignacio, you're early today." When I casually mentioned booking our airport transportation to the cruise port, Douglas became defensive. "Dad, stop micromanaging everything. We've got it covered." His tone was sharper than the situation warranted, leaving me confused and slightly hurt. Despite claiming financial challenges that prevented them from contributing to the cruise costs, I noticed brand new furniture in their living room and Stephanie sporting a diamond tennis bracelet I hadn't seen before. When I complimented it, she touched it self-consciously and mentioned it was just a little something from Douglas. A little something that I knew must have cost thousands, based on the clarity and size of those stones. The morning it all fell apart began like any other. I woke early, brewed coffee, and sat at my kitchen table organizing small gifts I'd purchased for the twins to open during our vacation. Sea-themed coloring books, child-size snorkel sets, matching sun hats. Simple treasures to make their first cruise special. My phone chimed with a text message from Douglas. "Dad, plans have changed. You're not coming on the cruise. It's for family only. Sorry for the late notice. For family only." Those words stopped my heart. I stared at the screen, certain I'd misunderstood. Family only? What was I if not family? I called immediately, hands shaking so badly I had to dial twice. "Look, Dad, it's not a big deal," Douglas said, his voice distant and annoyed. "Stephanie's parents decided they wanted to join us, and the ship is fully booked now. We couldn't get another cabin." "But I already have a cabin," I said, confusion clouding my thoughts. "I paid for all our cabins months ago." A long pause followed. "Well, we had to make some changes. Stephanie's parents are paying for the whole thing now as a gift to us. They wanted it to be just immediate family. The pieces weren't fitting together. Douglas, I am immediate family. I'm your father. An exasperated sigh came through the phone. You know what I mean, Dad. It's really about the kids spending time with both sets of grandparents equally, and frankly, you slow everything down. We're planning active excursions. And at your age, at my age, I hiked 3 miles every morning, volunteered building houses with Habitat for Humanity twice monthly, and could still carry both twins simultaneously up the stairs when they fell asleep in the car. My age had never been an issue before. Before I could respond, I heard Stephanie's voice in the background, followed by rustling as she apparently took the phone. Ignacio, let's be honest here. This trip will be more enjoyable for everyone, without having to accommodate your preferences and pace. My parents want quality time with their grandchildren without complications. Complications. Like the father who made their lifestyle possible was a complication. We've been trying to find the right time to tell you for months, she continued, her voice falsely sweet. Douglas was too worried about hurting your feelings. This isn't personal. It's just better for our family dynamic. Our family dynamic. As if I were an outsider looking in on their perfect family picture, rather than its foundation. After ending the call, I sat among the children's gifts, reading and rereading that text message. For family only. 3 words that redefined my place in my son's life. The first hours after that conversation passed in a fog of disbelief. Surely there had been a misunderstanding. Douglas would call back, apologize, explain that Stephanie had overstepped, or her parents had insisted on something unreasonable. My son, the boy who once wrote World's Best Dad cards every Father's Day, couldn't possibly dismiss me so coldly. The physical sensation of rejection was unlike anything I'd experienced. It felt like being punched in the chest, a constant pressure making it difficult to breathe. Even losing Marie hadn't carried this particular sting, the pain of being deliberately discarded by someone whose existence was intertwined with my own. Night came, but sleep didn't follow. I lay awake, replaying years of interactions, searching for the moment when things changed. When did I become expendable to my own son? Had I been too generous, too available, too eager to help, or not enough of something else? Around 3 a.m, I found myself in the spare bedroom closet, pulling down dusty photo albums. Douglas at 5, sitting on my shoulders at a baseball game. Douglas at 12, proudly displaying the science fair ribbon we'd stayed up all night to earn. Douglas at 18, between Marie and me at his high school graduation, his arms around us both, faces full of promise and pride. In every milestone photo, I saw the sacrifices behind the smiles, the overtime shifts I took to afford baseball camp, the promotion I declined because it required travel during his critical school years, the retirement savings redirected to his college fund. Not once had these choices felt like burdens. They were investments in our family's most precious resource. When morning finally arrived, I called Thomas, Douglas's childhood friend, who had remained close to our family even after moving to Seattle. Thomas had been Douglas's best man and visited whenever business brought him to Chicago. I was wondering when you'd call, Thomas said after I explained the situation. I've been worried about this for a while. About what? A long pause. About how they've been treating you, Ignacio. It's not right. Thomas reluctantly shared what he'd observed over recent years. How Douglas and Stephanie portrayed me to others as the needy father-in-law. How they'd joke about managing my expectations and limiting my involvement. How Stephanie had once told Thomas directly that she was stuck with an old-world father-in-law who doesn't understand boundaries. I should have said something sooner, Thomas admitted, regret heavy in his voice. But Douglas is different when she's around, more concerned with appearances and status. That's not the kid who used to stay at my house because he said my mom's cooking was better than restaurant food. After hanging up, my phone began ringing with calls from extended family members. My sister Angela, Marie's brother Paul, cousins I spoke with only at holidays. Word had traveled fast. Douglas told everyone you decided not to come because cruises aren't your thing, Angela said, indignation raising her voice. I knew that couldn't be right. You and Marie loved your cruise to Alaska. He said, what? The betrayal deepened with this new information. Not only was I excluded, but I was being portrayed as the one who chose not to participate. Angela drove over that afternoon, bringing comfort food and righteous anger on my behalf. At 74, my older sister had never lost her protective instinct. "You've done too much for that boy," she said, serving homemade pozole at my kitchen table. "Marie always worried you were overcompensating for your own childhood, giving Douglas everything without teaching him appreciation." Marie said that? The idea that my late wife had concerns she'd kept from me added another layer of hurt. "She loved how generous you were, Iggy. But she also saw how Douglas and that wife of his took advantage. The house, the cars, the constant financial help that never gets repaid. Marie was worried what would happen to you after she was gone." Angela's words forced me to confront realities I'd been avoiding. Later that evening, I pulled out financial records from my home office. Bank statements showing regular transfers to Douglas's account. Credit card bills I paid without question. Property tax statements for the house he lived in but had never made a payment toward. The documents told a clear story, one I'd been unwilling to read until now. I'd been used, methodically and consistently, by my own son and his wife. The revelation brought a strange clarity through the pain. This wasn't a sudden change in Douglas. It was merely the first time he'd been explicit about the true nature of our relationship. In my desk drawer, I found the property deed to Douglas's house, still solely in my name. The agreement we'd drawn up when they moved in 6 years ago stated that ownership would transfer gradually as he made payments toward the purchase price. Not a single payment had been made. The house where my grandchildren slept, where Douglas and Stephanie hosted lavish dinner parties for her friends, where they'd rejected me from their vacation, it was mine. Every brick, every shingle, every expensive appliance they'd installed using my credit card. That night, staring at the ceiling above my bed, a strange calm replaced the hurt that had consumed me. I wasn't just Douglas's father. I was his bank, his safety net, his real estate provider. And banks have terms that, when violated, have consequences. The next morning, I woke with an unfamiliar feeling settling in my chest. Anger, yes, but controlled and cold rather than the hot flash of rage that had initially surged through me. My first impulse had been confrontation, to drive to Douglas's house and demand answers face to face, to force him to explain to his children why Grandpa wasn't welcome on their family vacation. Instead, I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. If Douglas and Stephanie saw me as a resource rather than a father, perhaps it was time I behaved accordingly. Not out of vengeance, but out of self-preservation and respect for the life Marie and I had built. My first call was to Harold Bergman, the attorney who had handled Marie's estate and our financial affairs for 20 years. His secretary initially offered an appointment 2 weeks out, but upon hearing my voice and situation, Harold got on the line himself. "Come in at 2 this afternoon," he said, concern evident, even through his professional tone. "And Ignacio, bring all your documentation regarding Douglas's house and any loans or gifts. Everything." The 3 hours in Harold's downtown office were eye-opening. As we spread documents across his mahogany conference table, the full picture of my financial entanglement with Douglas became clear. Beyond the house and credit cards, there were car loans in my name, insurance policies I paid for, even the business startup funds that had never been formalized as either gifts or loans. "Legally, you're in a strong position," Harold explained, removing his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. "The house is unquestionably yours. The credit cards are in your name with him as an authorized user. The issue isn't what you can do, but what you should do." I appreciated Harold's concern for the family relationships at stake, but his next question struck me deeply. "Ignacio, what would Marie advise in this situation?" Marie, my conscience, my heart, my moral compass for 40 years. She would be devastated by Douglas's behavior but would want reconciliation if possible. Yet she was also fiercely protective of me and believed in natural consequences for poor choices. She would say that love doesn't mean being a doormat, I finally answered. She would say that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them face the results of their actions. Harold nodded, satisfied with my response. "Then let's proceed carefully and legally. No hasty actions, nothing driven by emotion." a strategic response that protects your interests while leaving the door open for eventual reconciliation. From Harold's office, I went directly to meet with Sophia Martinez, my financial advisor of 15 years. Unlike Harold's formal downtown office, Sophia worked from a converted Victorian house in Wicker Park, with comfortable armchairs and cups of strong Cuban coffee. "This isn't about punishment," I explained after outlining the situation. "It's about reclaiming control of my financial future and setting proper boundaries." Sophia's expression remained neutral, but her eyes reflected understanding. "You've worked too hard to have your retirement security compromised, Ignacio. Let's make sure that doesn't happen." Together, we crafted a comprehensive financial extrication plan. First, I would cancel all credit cards where Douglas was an authorized user, 4 in total, carrying balances that I had paid faithfully each month. Next, I would contact his auto loan provider and terminate any further payments. The house would require more complex handling, but the path was clear. "What about your own future?" Sophia asked, turning to a fresh page in her notebook. "Beyond disentangling from Douglas's finances, what do you want your life to look like now?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on my role as Douglas's father that I'd given little thought to who I was beyond that identity. What did I want for myself, apart from family obligations and expectations? "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Travel, maybe. Marie and I always talked about seeing Europe after retirement, but then she got sick. So maybe it's time to honor those dreams," Sophia suggested gently. "You're 74, in excellent health, financially secure if we implement these changes. Perhaps this painful situation is also an opportunity." Back home, I made the necessary phone calls to financial institutions. With each conversation, each security question answered and authorization given, I felt both weightlifting and sadness deepening. These weren't merely financial transactions, but the dismantling of the support structure I'd built around my son's life. For the house, I contacted Patricia Wong, a real estate agent Marie and I had known for years. "I need to sell a property quickly, but not desperately," I explained. "Fair market value, reliable buyers, streamlined process." "The market in that neighborhood is extremely hot right now," Patricia assured me. "With your equity position and the property condition, we should have multiple offers within days." As these practical arrangements proceeded, I received a flurry of text messages from Douglas. The cruise departure was still 2 days away, and apparently he was making last-minute purchases using the credit cards I had just canceled. "Dad, something's wrong with the Amex. Call me. Are the other cards having issues too? Trying to pay for excursions. Dad, call me. This is important." I didn't respond. Each message confirmed I was making the right decision. Not once did he ask if I was okay or express concern about why the cards might be declined. His only concern was the disruption to his plans. That evening, Thomas called to check on me. "How are you holding up?" "I'm taking action rather than just feeling hurt," I told him, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "It feels empowering." "Good for you, Ignacio. Douglas needs to learn that actions have consequences. I love him like a brother, but he's lost his way." Did I cause this? The question had been haunting me. By giving too much, expecting too little in return, Thomas's response was thoughtful. "You gave from love, which is never wrong. Douglas and Stephanie chose to take with entitlement, which is never right. The failure of character is theirs, not yours." That night, I sat on my back porch watching fireflies appear in the early spring twilight. For the first time since Marie's death, I felt her presence not as an absence, but as strength flowing through me. I wasn't just protecting my financial interests. I was reclaiming my dignity and self-respect. She would have approved. The morning Douglas and his family departed for their cruise, I received a curt text message. "Heading to the airport. Will be unreachable for 10 days. Make sure houseplants are watered on Thursday." No mention of the credit card issues. Just another expectation of service. I didn't respond, but I did check their flight status online. Once confirmation appeared that their plane had departed for Miami, I began the next phase of my plan. First came the remaining credit card cancellations. I called each company, speaking with customer service representatives and then account managers, explaining that I needed to cancel cards immediately due to unauthorized use. The process was surprisingly straightforward once I verified my identity as the primary account holder. Mr. Thompson, the authorized user, will be notified automatically when they attempt any further charges, explained the representative from the last credit card company. Do you want to leave any particular message? No message, I replied. The declined charges will speak for themselves. Next, I met Patricia at Douglas's house, using my key to enter. We walked through the 5-bedroom colonial that my son had lived in for 6 years without contributing $1 toward its ownership. The expensive renovations, the custom kitchen, the backyard playground for the twins, all financed through my generosity. Even in this condition, we should have no trouble getting asking price or above, Patricia said, making notes on her tablet. The market has appreciated significantly since you purchased it. How quickly can we complete a sale, I asked, with motivated buyers and no contingencies. As little as 30 days, possibly faster if they can pay cash. By the end of that day, professional photos had been taken, listing documents prepared, and a lockbox installed for showing access. Patricia's marketing strategy would go live the following morning, with the first open house scheduled for the weekend. The real estate process moved with unexpected speed. By day 3 of Douglas's cruise, we had 7 offers, all above asking price. 2 were cash offers from buyers willing to close in 3 weeks. The couple from Northbrook is perfect, Patricia advised. No financing contingencies, flexible moving timeline, and they've provided proof of funds. They can close in 20 days if we push the paperwork. I signed the acceptance documents in Harold's office, with him reviewing every detail before I put pen to paper. You understand this is irreversible, Ignacio? He asked, concern etched across his features. Once we close, the house belongs to the new owners. I understand, I replied, signing my name with a steady hand. Douglas needs to understand that as well. With the house sale proceeding, I turned my attention to my own property and possessions. The 4-bedroom home where Marie and I had raised Douglas, where we'd celebrated 40 Christmases, where she had taken her last breath in our bedroom surrounded by family. It held both precious memories and painful ones. After her death, I'd maintained everything exactly as she'd left it. Her reading glasses still rested on the bedside table. Her gardening hat hung by the back door. Her recipes remained organized in the kitchen drawer, handwritten cards stained with ingredients from decades of family meals. Now, walking through rooms filled with the accumulation of a lifetime, I felt ready to release what was no longer serving me. I hired a professional organizer who specialized in helping seniors downsize. Together, we sorted through belongings, creating categories, items to keep, to sell, to donate, and to offer to family members. Marie's clothing went to a women's shelter, our extensive book collection to the local library, furniture to Habitat for Humanity. I kept only what held deep personal meaning: photo albums, Marie's wedding ring, the hand-carved chess set my father had made, select pieces of art we'd collected during our marriage. With each item that left the house, I felt lighter. This wasn't erasing Marie or our life together, but distilling it to its essence. I was keeping what mattered while creating space for whatever might come next. Angela called daily, alternating between concern and enthusiastic support. Are you sure about selling your house too? She asked when I mentioned listing it after Douglas's was sold. I'm sure, I replied. There's nothing holding me in Chicago anymore except memories, and those travel with me. Where will you go? The question everyone asked, including Thomas and Harold and Sophia. The answer had come to me gradually, emerging from conversations with Angela about her life in Sedona, Arizona. The red rock landscapes, artist community, mild winters, and outdoor lifestyle appealed to me. Most importantly, it was somewhere Douglas would never think to look immediately. I purchased a one-way ticket to Arizona, scheduled for the day after Douglas's house closing. Angela offered her guest house until I found my own place, an arrangement that felt right for this transition period. As the practical matters fell into place, I wrestled with how to communicate my actions to Douglas. A confrontation upon his return seemed unnecessarily dramatic and potentially unproductive. After consideration, I decided on a timed email, scheduled to deliver the day they returned from the cruise. Writing that email was perhaps the most difficult part of my plan. I sat at my computer for hours, drafting and deleting, searching for words that conveyed the gravity of my decisions without vindictiveness. The final version began. Douglas, by the time you read this, several significant changes will have occurred. The credit cards you've been using have been canceled. The house you've been living in has been sold, with closing scheduled for April 28th. The new owners will take possession on May 1st, giving you 3 days to make arrangements for your family and belongings. These actions aren't taken out of anger, though I won't pretend I haven't been deeply hurt. They're the natural consequence of your choice to exclude me from your definition of family. If I am not family, then I am simply a financial resource, one you've now lost access to. The father who sacrificed everything for your future still exists, should you wish to rebuild that relationship on more honest terms. He can be reached through Angela when you're ready for that conversation. Dad, I scheduled the email, feeling neither triumph nor regret, just quiet resolution. The day before my departure, I visited Marie's grave at Rose Hill Cemetery. I brought fresh flowers and spent an hour sitting beside her headstone, telling her everything that had happened and everything I planned to do. I hope I'm doing the right thing, I said aloud, touching the cool marble. Not just for me, but for Douglas too. He needs to learn this lesson now, while he's young enough to change course. A gentle breeze rustled the new spring leaves overhead, and I chose to take it as Marie's response. Support, understanding, love that transcended easy answers or comfortable solutions. My drive west began early the next morning. I packed my SUV with the essential belongings I'd kept, secured the house for the real estate agent to show, and pulled away from the driveway I'd shoveled hundreds of times over the decades. The journey to Sedona took 3 days. I could have flown, but the drive provided time to process everything that had happened and everything still to come. I stopped at roadside diners, slept in modest hotels, and watched America unfold outside my windows. Plains giving way to mountains, cities to vast open spaces. With each mile, I felt both the distance from my past life and the proximity to whatever waited ahead. 5 days into their cruise, while the Norwegian Pearl sailed between Grand Cayman and Cozumel, Douglas discovered that all his credit cards had been declined. According to Thomas, who heard the story later, Douglas was attempting to book a private dolphin excursion for the twins when the first card was rejected. He tried each card, one after another, Thomas told me during our weekly phone call. By the 4th rejection, he was causing a scene at the excursion desk. Stephanie was apparently furious, blaming Douglas for the embarrassment in front of her parents. They were forced to borrow money to continue enjoying their vacation, with Stephanie's father making pointed comments about financial responsibility throughout the remainder of the cruise. The ships have satellite internet, Thomas explained. Douglas was frantically emailing and calling the credit card companies, only to discover the cards had been canceled by the primary account holder. The true reckoning waited for their return to Miami. When they landed and Douglas turned on his phone, my timed email was waiting, along with multiple notices from Patricia about the house sale and the scheduled closing date. According to Angela, who heard from Douglas's cousin Jeff, the scene at Miami International was explosive. Stephanie broke down in tears at the baggage claim when Douglas explained they no longer had a house to return to. Her parents, already frustrated by the credit card situation, refused to offer financial assistance beyond covering their immediate travel needs. They arrived back in Chicago to find the sold sign already in the yard, Angela reported during one of our daily calls. Douglas has been trying to reach Harold, but of course Harold won't discuss your affairs with him. I had instructed Harold to direct any inquiries from Douglas to the real estate closing documents, which contained all the legally required information about the transaction. No further explanation was necessary or would be provided. The new owners, a surgeon and his wife relocating from Boston, had agreed to a 3-day window before taking possession. This gave Douglas and Stephanie just enough time to pack essentials and find temporary housing. According to Thomas, they moved into an extended stay hotel while frantically searching for an apartment that would accept a family of 4 with no proof of income and damaged credit. Stephanie's parents offered to let them stay in Michigan, But apparently she refused, Thomas said. Something about not wanting to admit failure by moving back home. Douglas attempted to challenge the house sale legally, claiming he had verbal agreements and established residence. Harold had anticipated this and prepared documentation showing the complete absence of any payments toward purchase, plus copies of the original agreement clearly stating my right to sell the property at any time prior to completion of the purchase terms. The judge didn't even need to hear the full case, Harold reported after Douglas's emergency filing was dismissed. One look at the paperwork and it was clear there was no legal claim to be made. Financially stranded and homeless, Douglas began a desperate search to locate me. He called friends, extended family, former colleagues, even our old neighbors. Most had no information to share. Those who did, like Angela, had been instructed to provide only minimal details unless I indicated otherwise. 2 weeks after their return, my timed email remained the only direct communication Douglas had received from me. His messages grew increasingly desperate. "Dad, we need to talk immediately. You can't just sell our house. The twins have school here. This isn't legal. I'm talking to lawyers. Where are you? Nobody will tell me anything. Dad, please. We have nowhere to go." Eventually, the tone shifted. "I understand you're upset about the cruise thing. Can we please just talk this through? I know I made a mistake. Stephanie feels terrible too. Dad, the twins are asking for you. They miss their grandpa." The final text message came 3 weeks after their return. "I never thought you would abandon your grandchildren over something so small. Guess I didn't know you at all." That last message nearly broke my resolve. The thought of Jackson and Lily confused about my absence, perhaps being told I had abandoned them. It pierced my heart in a way Douglas's other manipulations hadn't. But Angela reminded me of the reality. They were perfectly willing to tell those children Grandpa wasn't family enough for their cruise, she said firmly. "Don't let him use them as pawns now." From mutual connections, I learned that Stephanie's parents had finally intervened, but with strict conditions. They provided first and last month's rent for a modest apartment, significantly smaller than the house they'd lost. However, they required Douglas to take a position at one of Stephanie's father's car dealerships, abandoning his marketing firm dreams for a stable income. "Stephanie is furious," Thomas reported. "Apparently she's blaming Douglas for everything. Losing the house, the credit cards, their lifestyle. She's telling everyone who listened that she married a man who couldn't even manage his relationship with his own father properly." According to Angela, who still saw Douglas occasionally to check on the twins, the strain was showing in their marriage. Stephanie had taken the children to stay with her parents for weeks at a time, leaving Douglas alone in their small apartment surrounded by boxes they hadn't bothered to unpack. "He's lost weight," Angela told me. "Looks like he's aged 10 years in 2 months. I'd feel sorry for him if he showed any real understanding of what he did wrong." 6 weeks after their return, Douglas received my email forwarded from Harold containing documentation of every financial support I had provided over the years. The spreadsheet totaled nearly $1 million in housing, education, vehicles, credit card payments, and business investments, none of which had ever been repaid. At the bottom, a simple note read, "This information is provided for educational purposes only, not as a request for repayment." According to Thomas, who met Douglas for coffee shortly after, that document finally broke through his denial. He just kept saying, "I had no idea it was that much." But how could he not know? He just never added it up because it was easier not to think about it. 3 months after the cruise, Douglas sent a letter to Angela's address in Arizona. Unlike his texts and emails, this was handwritten on proper stationery, spanning 6 pages of reflection and apparent self-examination. Angela called immediately. "Do you want me to forward it? It seems different from his other messages." "Read me the first paragraph," I requested, not yet ready to engage directly. She read, "Dad, I've spent weeks trying to find the words to express how completely I failed you as a son. There is no excuse for my behavior, no justification for how I've treated you. What I did was cruel, ungrateful, and unforgivable. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I understand now what I've done." I asked Angela to send the letter. When it arrived, I read it alone on my patio, overlooking the red rocks of Sedona as the sun set, painting the landscape in fiery orange and deep purple. Douglas's words seemed genuinely remorseful, acknowledging not just the cruise incident, but years of taking advantage of my generosity while giving little in return. The most revealing paragraph came toward the end. Stephanie left last week, taking the twins to live with her parents in Michigan. She said she married me believing I had financial security and family wealth to offer, not realizing it was all from you. Without your support, she doesn't see a future for us. I can't blame her. I presented myself as something I wasn't, just like I presented myself to you as a grateful son when my actions showed otherwise. For the first time since the text message that started everything, I felt a glimmer of hope that Douglas might actually be learning from this experience, not the lesson I'd intended. I never wanted his marriage to fail or my grandchildren to move away, but perhaps a deeper understanding of character and consequence that would serve him better in the long run. After careful consideration, I called him. The conversation was awkward, halting, filled with long pauses and occasional tears on both sides. Douglas explained that he was facing bankruptcy, working long hours at his father-in-law's dealership while trying to negotiate visitation rights with his children. "I deserve all of it," he said toward the end of our call. "I just never thought I'd lose everything that mattered because of one selfish decision." "Not one decision," I corrected gently. "A pattern of decisions over many years. The cruise was just the moment I finally recognized it." "Can we ever fix this?" he asked, his voice small like the child who'd once asked if I could repair his broken bicycle. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but recognizing the problem is the first step. The rest takes time and consistent effort from both of us." We agreed to talk again the following week, a small step toward whatever our relationship might become in the future. 6 months after leaving Chicago, my life in Sedona had taken shape in ways I couldn't have imagined. The guest house on Angela's property had become my home, though I was considering purchasing a small place of my own nearby. I joined a hiking club for seniors, volunteered teaching English to Spanish-speaking immigrants, and even tried my hand at the pottery classes Sedona was famous for. My financial situation, carefully managed by Sophia through remote consultations, remained secure. The proceeds from selling both houses had been invested conservatively, providing monthly income beyond my pension and Social Security. For the first time since Marie's death, I felt not just financially stable but purposeful and engaged with life. Angela watched this transformation with satisfaction. "Marie would be so proud of you," she told me one evening as we shared dinner on the patio. "Not just for standing up for yourself with Douglas, but for building this new chapter." The unexpected letter from Douglas arrived on a Tuesday, forwarded by Harold, who still handled my legal affairs in Chicago. Unlike his previous communication, this wasn't an emotional plea, but a formal request to meet in person, along with flight information showing he'd already purchased a ticket to Arizona. My initial reaction was hesitation. Our phone conversations over recent months had been cordial but strained, focusing mainly on superficial topics rather than addressing the deeper wounds. Was I ready for the intensity of a face-to-face meeting? After discussing it with Angela and Thomas, I agreed to see Douglas during his planned visit, suggesting a neutral location rather than Angela's home. We would meet at a restaurant in downtown Sedona, public enough to discourage extreme emotions but private enough for honest conversation. The man who approached my table at Elote Cafe barely resembled the polished, confident son I remembered. Douglas had indeed lost weight, his clothes hanging loosely on his frame. New lines marked his face, and his eyes held a wariness that spoke of difficult months. "You look well, Dad," he said after an awkward embrace. "Retirement suits you." "I'm not sure I'd call it retirement," I replied, gesturing for him to sit. "More like redirection. How are the twins?" This neutral opening allowed conversation to flow more naturally than I'd feared. Douglas shared updates about Jackson and Lily, now living primarily with Stephanie in Michigan but visiting him one weekend each month. His relationship with Stephanie remained strained, divorce proceedings moving forward slowly due to custody negotiations. "They're happy with their grandparents," Douglas admitted, pain evident in his voice. "Stephanie's father bought them a puppy. They're in a good school district. They have cousins nearby." I can't compete with that on a car salesman's salary. Children need love more than things, I reminded him, thinking of my own childhood with parents who could offer little materially but gave abundantly in presence and affection. Quality time matters more than puppies. As dinner progressed, the conversation inevitably turned to the events that had led us here. Douglas placed his fork down carefully, meeting my eyes directly for the first time that evening. I've been in therapy since Stephanie left, he said quietly, trying to understand how I became the kind of person who could treat his father that way, who could take and take for years without giving back or even feeling grateful. And what have you learned? I asked, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. That I developed a sense of entitlement growing up with more advantages than you had. That I married someone who reinforced those worst qualities in me. That I measured my worth by possessions and appearances rather than character and actions. He paused, swallowing hard. And that I wasted years not appreciating the one person who always put me first. The rawness of his self-assessment touched me deeply. This wasn't the defensive Douglas of 6 months ago, but a man genuinely grappling with painful self-knowledge. The cruise was just the final straw, I acknowledged. But it was a particularly painful one. It was Stephanie's idea initially, Douglas explained, though not as an excuse. Her parents offered to pay if we made it just family, by which they meant their side. I should have refused immediately, should have told them you were non-negotiable. Instead, I convinced myself it was no big deal, that you'd understand. I might have understood if you'd been honest from the beginning, I noted. It was the deception followed by dismissal that hurt most deeply. We talked for hours, the restaurant emptying around us as staff began closing procedures. Douglas asked about my new life, listening with genuine interest to stories about my hiking adventures and volunteer work. I inquired about his plans for rebuilding his life, offering neither financial assistance nor criticism, just attentive concern. As we prepared to leave, Douglas hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket. I brought something for you. He handed me an envelope containing photos of the twins at their recent school events, smiling broadly in their new environment. They ask about you all the time, he said softly. I've told them the truth, that Grandpa and Daddy had a serious disagreement, but we're working on fixing it. That sometimes even grown-ups make mistakes they need to learn from. That's a good lesson for them, I replied, touched by both the photos and his honesty with my grandchildren. We established new boundaries that night, clear expectations for rebuilding our relationship gradually, without financial entanglement. Douglas would come to Sedona quarterly to visit. I would consider trips to Michigan to see the twins, once Douglas had established a proper visitation routine. We would continue regular phone calls, focusing on genuine connection rather than material concerns. In the months that followed, these boundaries proved crucial to healing. Without financial support to complicate things, our relationship slowly found new footing based on mutual respect rather than dependence. Douglas continued therapy, working through issues beyond just our relationship. I maintained my independent life in Sedona while creating space for family connections on new terms. 1 year after the cruise incident, I sat on my newly purchased patio, overlooking the same red rock formations that had welcomed me to this new chapter. The events that brought me here had been painful beyond measure, yet the outcome had ultimately benefited both Douglas and me. My son was learning to stand on his own, building a life based on authentic values rather than appearances. I had discovered independence and purpose beyond my identity as a parent. We were both becoming better versions of ourselves through this difficult journey. The most important lesson wasn't about money or even family obligation, but about the necessity of self-respect in all relationships. Love without boundaries isn't truly love but enablement. Sometimes the most loving action is allowing natural consequences to occur, however painful they might be in the moment. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood or obligation alone, but by mutual respect and care. That giving everything to your children isn't always what's best for them. That it's never too late to establish healthy boundaries or begin a new chapter. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision with a family member that seemed harsh but was ultimately for the best? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story about rediscovering self-worth resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more reflections on family, boundaries, and finding strength through life's most challenging moments. Remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most meaningful connections. Thank you for listening to my journey.